Thanks to Skylight Calendar for sponsoring today's video. This week, I want to take you with me as I cook some quick summer breakfast for my family. I'm calling this little series Summer Food Quick, and this is breakfast edition. When it comes to feeding my family quickly during the summertime, there is nothing that beats the good old Instant Pot. And so this morning I am making some really fast Instant Pot oats. Usually I just do oats, but this week I actually had some pearl barley left in my pantry. And so it inspired me to make this kind of like a multi-grain breakfast bowl or breakfast porridge. And so I started by cooking the pearl barley first, and I let that pressure cook in some water, and then I'll let that release for just a minute or two, and then I will add in some more water along with just some old-fashioned rolled oats, and then I'll pressure cook it again. But it's really fast. You don't have to do much besides let the valve release for a couple minutes and then just dump in those oats, but it gives it such a hearty texture, and I love incorporating different kinds of grains into our diet, and so this is a really fun and delicious way to do it. Now, I'm always thinking ahead, so I knew I wanted to have this oatmeal for breakfast this morning, but I wanted something special to go on top of it besides just our normal kind of maple syrup, or maybe sometimes we'll do a little bit of jam, like a homemade jam's really good. But this time we have summer berries in season. So I'm taking some strawberries and blueberries, and I did this yesterday so it would be ready to go for this morning, because anytime I'm making breakfast, I need it to be really quick. I usually don't have a ton of time to put into it. So having little things like this already in the fridge just makes breakfast go so smoothly. Yesterday, I put together this, what I'm calling summer berry compote, and it is so simple and it comes together in under 10 minutes. It's super, super easy to make. So I'm using some fresh strawberries, some fresh blueberries, and then sweeten them to taste. I'm using some raw sugar, but you could definitely sweeten it with maple syrup or honey. And then I do a little squeeze of lemon juice and lemon zest, and we're gonna get that on the stove and just let that boil for a few minutes. It's essentially just a quick jam, or kind of like a freezer jam, but we're gonna use it as a topping for our oatmeal, and it is so delicious. I'll just add a pinch of salt, and then once those boil and are nice and soft and all their juices have released, then I'll stir in a little cornstarch slurry and thicken it up, and it is instantly the best berry sauce you've ever had. You could put it on things like sourdough pancakes, vanilla ice cream, you could make shortcake out of it. It is so flavorful, and you really don't have to sweeten it a lot because of all those fresh, ripe berries. So I'm gonna put that in the container, let it cool off, and then I'll put it in the fridge overnight, and then in the morning I can just pull it out to top that multigrain oatmeal. So after it's released pressure, it's gonna look like this. And then what I like to do is add the milk in now versus at the beginning, because I feel like anytime I add milk into the Instant Pot and pressure cook it, it just tends to burn. So instead I add it at the end. So I added in about 3/4 of a cup of whole milk and a tablespoon of butter. I'll make sure to have all the recipes for you down below, but you can see the beautiful texture of this. It is just the perfect oatmeal. I love the texture of it. It's just a little bit chewier and heartier, and it just is really great on mornings you need to eat something and be really full for the rest of the day. This gives us so much energy, and topping it with the fresh berry compote is just really delicious, and it's super economical this time of year. You can find lots of berries on sale that are super ripe, so throwing those in a pan with a little bit of water and some lemon is super economical. And then of course oatmeal is always economical, but rounding that out with a different grain too just makes this so hearty and comforting. I want to take a second and tell you about today's video sponsor, Skylight Calendar. It's a touchscreen digital calendar that helps you organize your family's chores, your busy schedule, dinner plans. It even has customizable lists. I love the list function because I can make a grocery list and have it on my calendar and on my phone app. That way I can go back and forth and check things off. So within your profile, you can have different family members in there, so we can all go in there and check things off our list, and we kind of know each other's schedules. And the chore chart is a game changer because my kids can check things off as they go. I personally love it because it's designed to help you manage your home. So as a homemaker, as a parent, a teacher to your kids, whatever it may be, it helps so much to be able to plug everything in and organize it. And I love that it will sync your events from other existing digital calendars. So get organized in 2025 with Skylight Calendar. You can use my code HEALTHYLIZ30 at the link in the description, or you can scan the QR code here on screen, and it's going to give you $30 off your 15-inch calendar, and this is available globally. Thanks so much to Skylight for sponsoring today's video. On day 2, I'm making a homemade veggie herb garlic cream cheese to spread on some kamut bagels that I made yesterday. So again, this is like an extension of showing you my rhythm of cooking, because I made something yesterday and now I'm making something today to go with it. So it's always kind of like this 2-step process, but it makes it easier when you just split up your cooking into different days, so there's not as much pressure at a specific meal time. So this morning I ran out to the garden and I grabbed some of my fresh chives and a little bit of my cutting celery. And I'm going to be sharing a garden tour coming soon. There's so much growing right now, and it has really just been a great season thus far. I'm still waiting on my cherry tomatoes to come in and everything like that, but I've been able to harvest so many things like kale and lettuces, my cutting celery, and I feel like I'm running out there just about every day to grab some sort of herb. So for the cream cheese, you could really make this 2 different ways. I made mine in my KitchenAid stand mixer, but really I thought about this afterwards, and you could just put it all in the food processor and it would make the process be extremely quick and efficient. So I'm chopping up my cutting celery from the garden and a little bit of carrot. I have a scallion and some garlic, and I'm gonna chop them up really finely. That's kind of key to this whole cream cheese, is you want everything to be really tiny. And of course you can just put this in your food processor and pulse it a few times and let it totally mix up on its own in the food processor, but I went ahead and chopped everything as fine as I could, and then I put it in the stand mixer. Now, to show you the bagels that I made yesterday to go with this cream cheese this morning, in my KitchenAid I got going on a dough, and this isn't a sourdough recipe, it's a kamut recipe using just regular instant yeast, and I love it because it comes together super fast. I don't have to babysit it just gets done really quickly, and I love using the kamut flour with it. I'm going to have this exact recipe on my website, so I'll link it for you down below. But I really want to show you the process of how to make them right now, so the exact measurements will be there. This is an easy recipe you can do in the stand mixer, and once that ball of dough is formed, I just let it rise. You're going to let it rise a couple of times, and then once it's nice and puffy, you'll roll out little balls and let those rise for a few minutes. And then I get a big stock pot full of water, and I do a little bit of barley malt syrup. And I love the flavor that brings. It really makes them taste like authentic bagels, but you could also substitute that for a little bit of brown sugar. So I'm poking my finger through the center of the bagel and we just stretch it out a little bit. I don't like to make it too wide or it can kind of make the bagel a little bit more fragile when you add it into the water. You just want about 1.5 to 2 inches of hole in the middle of your bagel. And then I'll put those in the water and do about 3 or 4 minutes on the first side and flip them over and do a couple minutes on the other side. Then I'll remove them to a baking sheet that I sprinkle with a little bit of cornmeal or semolina flour, just something to give it a little bit of texture on the bottom. And then whenever I want to do a topping, this day I was doing several different ones, I make a little egg wash with egg white and water and I beat it until it's frothy. And then you can baste your bagels after they've baked for a few minutes or at the beginning, depending on which topping you're using. And that will make that topping stick. So these bagels I baked for about 20 minutes and right before they were done, I brushed them with that egg white mixture. And then I can sprinkle on the toppings like onion or poppy seed. Generally, the toppings you don't want to burn in the oven, you put them on right before they're done baking. Now, I also did a white cheddar version, which is kind of like a play on Asiago cheese, and it was probably my favorite besides the onion. Those two were my top favorite. They were so good. And for that, you do start by putting the cheese on at the beginning and they turn out gorgeous golden brown. And these are the most authentic bagels I've ever made. I've tried a lot of different bagel recipes over the years and they usually just feel more like a bread or a roll, but these really turn out like a real bagel and they totally are a substitute for the bagel shop. For day 3, I'm making some garden fresh zucchini egg bites, but really they're almost kind of like a souffle. They're a little bit puffier and they just have this amazing fluffy texture that just kind of melts away. And I love this time of year finding different recipes to fit in those garden veggies. I have tons of different squashes and cucumbers and zucchini, all of that kind of stuff coming out of the garden. And so you really have to get creative with ways to use it up and just incorporate those summer vegetables and kind of let them determine what you're eating. So I'm starting by grating up one zucchini. This is a beautiful heirloom zucchini. I love the stripes on it. It's just so beautiful. And I'm getting that on the stove, and we're going to let that cook for just a couple minutes so that it will release some of its water content before we put it into the egg muffins so that they're not watery. And then this morning I grabbed some herbs from my garden. So I've got some fresh chives and some fresh thyme. I'm just de-stemming the thyme and removing the leaves. And then you can leave them whole like that because they're so small, or you can chop them up. And then of course I'm going to chop up some chives as well. One of the reasons I really love this recipe is because I can fit in all of these herbs and zucchini into my protein for breakfast. And not only does this recipe have eggs in it, but it also has cheese, which has protein and fat to keep you full. And then I'm also adding in cottage cheese. And even if you don't like cottage cheese, you absolutely can't taste it or feel it in this recipe because we're going to put it in the food processor or in the blender, and you blend the batter before you put the zucchini in. You blend the batter until it's nice and smooth so you don't know it's there. There's no texture difference other than it's going to be nice and fluffy like a souffle. I love like restaurants that serve souffles. That is some of my favorite breakfast food, and this is such a healthy version. So I'm going to let the zucchini cool, and while it's cooling, that's when I put about 8 eggs or so in my food processor with a cup of sharp white cheddar cheese, and then I also do about a quarter cup or so of Parmesan cheese that I just grate really finely, but it doesn't matter because you'll chop it up in the food processor. And then I'm doing about a half a cup of cottage cheese and salt and pepper to taste. And we're going to whirl that together until it is nice and velvety smooth. This is a great recipe that you can prep in advance and have in the fridge and just reheat, especially if you have kids to feed in the morning. This is something amazing that you can have for breakfast, brunch, or lunch, and it's packed full of veggies and protein. So you really should just have these in the fridge all summer long for you or for the kids. This is a great little nutrient dense package, and they won't even know all the healthy stuff they're getting in there. So I'm putting in that sauteed zucchini that's cooled into the bottom of my little muffin tin that is lined with unbleached parchment liners, and I put the zucchini in first so that it's evenly distributed. Then I take a measuring cup of about a quarter cup or so, and I'll spoon over that egg mixture we made, and then top it with another sprinkling of Parmesan. That way when you bite into it, you just get all that flavor right in that first bite. So I sprinkle Parmesan, and then I do a little bit of the fresh thyme over the top, and it's beautiful, flavorful, and they cook up super quickly in the oven too. On day 4, we're making a blueberry breakfast crisp. So this is another recipe you can use old-fashioned oats in, and I love that because old-fashioned oats are such a great way to feed your family something wholesome but really affordable. And then I have some frozen blueberries that I needed to use up. They've been in my freezer for a little while, so I thought, let's make a blueberry breakfast crisp, and we'll make it healthier and more wholesome than a dessert crisp. And then at the end, you can top it with Greek yogurt versus like whipped cream or ice cream. So it's just a fun play on a dessert. So I'm starting out with about 4 to 5 cups of frozen blueberries, but I also need to try making this with fresh blueberries because I know at my farmer's market right now, you can get a big quart of just delicious ripe blueberries. There's also a You Pick blueberry place right by my house. So I need to go pick some blueberries. And I know a lot of us are always looking for ways to preserve our harvest or just preserve the season. So what are some of your favorite blueberry recipes and peach recipes to use up all of your ripe fruit? let me know because I would love to have some really good ideas. I have 2 peach trees in my backyard that are both fruit bearing right now. I'm looking at my peaches as we speak. And then I also had a few cherry trees this year, but we kind of missed the harvest. It was the first year that they bore cherries, and immediately some sort of animal or critter got to them. So that was really sad. But for my peaches, I definitely want to preserve that harvest. So let me know if you have any ideas for me. You can start with frozen blueberries, and then I'm adding in some lemon juice and lemon zest. I love doing bright notes in any sort of berry thing that I'm making. It just really brings out the flavor and also balances the sweetness. But I'm not adding a lot of sugar to this. I'm just going to add a couple tablespoons or so to sweeten it up. And you can use either raw cane sugar or maple syrup or raw honey. And then I'm adding in some good vanilla extract just to give it a little bit more flavor. And I'll just mix that together with a couple tablespoons of my kamut flour or just all-purpose flour, and mix that together really well. And then I'm also adding in a little bit of cornstarch because that's going to help thicken that blueberry sauce once it starts to release its juices. And this is so simple and so quick. You can just put it straight into a pie dish or any sort of baking dish. And then really quickly, I'm going to melt half a stick of butter, and this is going to make our little oat topping. So for that, we're going to use melted butter, some rolled old-fashioned oats, and then a little bit of all-purpose flour. You really don't need much, just about a quarter cup brings it all together, but it's mostly oats, which I appreciate. And then I'm going to do some ground cinnamon to give it that classic kind of crisp taste. And then about 3 tablespoons or so of pure maple syrup just to sweeten it up. And then I'll mix that all together and I'll put that right on top of those blueberries and then just pop it into the oven and let it bake. If you're new to my channel, I'll link some of my videos down below so you can catch up on some of the things I like to do in the kitchen, like sourdough baking and how I cook 3 meals in a day, my rhythm of cooking. There's so many different ideas that I've shared, so you can catch up there, and I'll have my recipes for you on my website. So thank you so much for joining me in the kitchen.